Now, the first of 9,000 Russian troops have arrived in Belarus. Minsk and Moscow say they're setting up a joint unit to defend Belarus's borders. The country's leader, Alexander Lukashenko, claims that Belarus faces threats from neighbouring Ukraine and its Western allies. Ukraine accuses Moscow of trying to draw Belarus into the war.
A train said to be carrying Russian military vehicles arrives in Belarus. Another apparently full of Russian soldiers. Over the last few days, Belarus's defense ministry has been releasing images like these to prove that a deal struck between it and its giant neighbour Russia is really happening.
We arrived from the central region of Russia. Well, specifically, I'm from Moscow. We've come to help the brotherly people of the Republic of Belarus to strengthen their borders and to make everyone feel how united the peoples of Russia and Belarus are.
Alexander Lukashenko announced the plan for a joint military unit more than a week ago. Minsk has since confirmed that around 9,000 Russian troops will be based in the country close to the Ukrainian border. But Lukashenko continues to deny that his country will attack Ukraine. It's no secret, though, that Russia's Vladimir Putin has been using Belarus in its war against Kyiv, including launching airstrikes from there. Ukraine has already released images of its armed forces said to be training near the border with Belarus. But it had already been holding military drills in the region before the deal between Minsk and Moscow was announced. Belarus is keen to show it's giving these Russian soldiers a warm welcome. But once the show is over, no one's quite sure what will happen next.
Well, let's take a look at this with Yekaterina Schulmann, who is a political scientist who left Russia shortly after the war began. She's a fellow at the Robert Bosch Stiftung and joins us from Berlin. Welcome to DW. What's your best guess as to why this joint Russian-Belarusian unit has been set up?
Actually, the position of the Belarusian president Alexander Lukashenko is one of the most remarkable in political history. He is stranded between three entities, all of which want him away, and each of which is more powerful than he is. The West, Russia, and his own people. And yet he manages to preserve power. He has also somehow managed to wiggle away from direct entanglement in the Ukrainian war. He is paying his respects to the Russian president. He is doing all the lip service he possibly can. He is also allowing the use of Belarusian territory for the launch of Russian missiles, but he has not given any people to his ally, the ally that so desperately needs more manpower. As far as it is possible to determine the future or to understand what will be happening, he will try to keep the same policy that has so far been so successful to him. He will try to continue in his unique position of the same time a jailer and an executioner of his native land and a preserver of its independence, at least its independence from Russia.
But this sounds like a step away from that studied neutrality that you've just outlined there. This sounds like a joint Belarusian and Russian unit. That sounds like a step towards involvement beyond allowing Russia to use his country as a sort of launch pad.
During the last 20 years, we've seen and heard so many announcements of the next phase of Russian-Belarusian entity, Russian-Belarusian unity. We have seen the creation and then the disappearance of collective bodies like the joint parliament. We have heard so many declarations of this kind, and yet somehow nothing very material happened after that. It may be that now Lukashenko will find it important possible to any longer feed his dangerous neighbor and his dangerous ally with words and with symbolic actions of this kind. But I wouldn't quite agree with you that this looks like a step away from this policy. A real step away would be sending 20,000 or 50,000 of Belarusian military to fight alongside with Russia.
Right. So you paint an interesting picture of the dynamic between these two authoritarian leaders. So this is, as you see it, Alexander Lukashenko doing his best to pacify Moscow without actually committing himself to this war. Why does he want to take that view? Why does he want to stay out of this war while patting Vladimir Putin on the head, as it were?
There may be various reasons, but the main reason for anything any autocrat is doing is the preservation of power. So he very naturally wants to remain the president of an independent country rather than some sort of vassal to Moscow. He is more than willing to take all the money that Moscow can give him, and he's been remarkably successful in this direction. But he wants to have his own country to himself. He is also aware that, as we are aware, although independent sociology is still more, it's still less possible in Belarus than in Russia, but still we do have data demonstrating that the war is extremely unpopular in Belarusian society, and it is also unpopular among the military. So he has managed to preserve his power in 2020 solely with the help of Russia, and yet his independence, his sovereignty is still with him. And since February, he has also managed to stay away from direct entanglement, maybe knowing that should he give the order for the troops to march towards Ukraine, maybe this will not result in the execution of the order, but rather in loss of power for himself.
That's a fascinating analysis, and we thank you for it. Yekaterina Schulmann, political scientist. Thank you.
Thank you.